a story that I just made up. I just remembered this. There was a revolutionist, and he sent one of his would-be revolutionists over to this town to look after some affairs that he mentioned. One in particular, he said, be sure and do so-and-so. And he left the details to the enlistee. And they corresponded by mail. That's it. The enlistee several times wrote asking questions, should I do so-and-so specifically? Should I use such and such methods? And the revolutionist wrote him back and said, I left the details, I left the means, the methods to you. Just consider what you're doing and what you think you've gotten from all this. And the enlistee kept writing back, and he still wasn't satisfied, and he couldn't decide. So the revolutionist wrote back and said, all right, you've named several of what you consider to be alternatives that you asked me to pick one, and I'm not going to. So you look at the several alternatives that you have mentioned, and you consider on each one, if you did it, and I was there and saw you use that method, would I approve? Do you understand? And the enlistee wrote back, and he still didn't like it, or she. And he said, I know what you're asking. And I asked myself that of all the alternates that I mentioned to you, about whether you, if you saw me do this one or that one or the third one, if you were here and saw it, would you approve? I know what you're asking me to do. I know what you're trying to get me to do. And I did that to myself, and I still can't decide. And the revolutionist thought to himself, what the hell with this whole story? After all, the whole thing happened in my own nervous system. Or it should have. End of story. That's the end of the story. As far as your present existence is concerned, all of you getting this here in person and in other places, as far as your present existence is concerned, the three-dimensional secret lies in the place. I'm going to tell you, it lies in the place where everything overlaps. That's where it is. It lies in the place that you think everything overlaps. To remind you for a second of where I took or from whence I took the little metaphorical picture of visual sight last time, to get the full effect of three-dimensional sight, the way that the binocular vision in one particular place always overlaps. And now into that which is still true metaphorically, but is true in a way that does not come into one's ordinary awareness, is that everything of which you are conscious, because with sight, imagination, sound, we're still talking about the senses. So it is all molecular. It is all either matter turned into energy, exciting your molecules, or if you get real clever, you can try and turn it around the other way, but you can't get out of it. If it's your imagination, as you call it, if it's your speculation, if you were still so insane to believe that voices were talking to you, it's the same thing. It's the same basis. You can't escape that. Everything of which you can be conscious overlaps at city level immediately with one thing, and that is its apparent opposite, its apparent opposition, that which apparently resists it. Or if it doesn't seem to fit in that category, it is the unknown aspect of that which you seem to know. That if your consciousness tells you, well, I know without any doubt that to be a good person, to do whatever this seems to be, to ultimately do this, I know that I have got to be charitable, let's say. And if I said, or if you could ask yourself, if you could play revolutionist to yourself and you wrote yourself a letter and said, well, that's not bad, but does that cover it? And if you were still a fairly well employed in literacy, you would have to write yourself back and say, well, no, I'm sure charity must play a part in it somewhere, but there's still certain aspects I don't know. So if your consciousness told you, even at city level, that without any doubt, no matter what I say, no matter what you've read up until now, no matter what you imagine, you are convinced that charity somewhere plays a great role in a person doing something extraordinary inside the privacy of their own skull, inside their own heart cavity, in their lifetime, charity has got to play some great role. And then, the overlapping part is, there's probably more to it than that. I just feel sure there is. I just don't know what else is involved. There's your overlap. I went through that to show you if you couldn't see within you. I didn't go into this last time when I brought this up. Some of you should be getting clever enough. When I say the opposite, just because your nervous system says, well, I believe that a man should be or a woman should be of a loving nature toward their fellow person, that's got to play some part in this. And then you could have, very likely, your own molecular voices in your own nervous system, since that is what separates you from baboons and insurance salesmen, to believe, and the voices say, well, I don't hate people, so the opposite is not in me. I don't always succeed in being real loving, but I don't hate people. You're wrong. All right, if you can't see that immediately, you got to see this, that there is an inadequacy in everything that you can apparently do, anything that you can apparently believe. If you cannot readily see that you believe that humans are basically good, and you can't find within yourself, the voices will not admit that you entertain the opposite of that. You're not aware of it. Then you've got to see this. It overlaps into another area wherein you're not so sure, wherein there's not that part of you that can comply with what you say you believe. Anything you believe, anything you think, anything you've ever felt, anything you've ever done overlaps with its opposite, with its unknown aspect, with an extension of it in which, an area of an extension in which you cannot completely function or that you cannot completely comprehend. Now back to what I started to tell you, what I did tell you. At your present existence, the secret, the three-dimensional secret, that which everyone else has always believed in the city that ever thought about this, that they believe is secret information somewhere. The secret information that is absolutely new is the way they separate, that is that God is a Martian. That it's absolutely new information as far as they're concerned, that they never heard that, they never even thought about it. Even on their wildest nights of taking drugs, they had never thought that God might be a Martian. So, if they found this secret book, or they found this guy with a beard in a foreign country that said, here's the secret. All right, to them, to a certain number of people throughout history, they believe, and I didn't make up that example just to be facetious or to shortchange what people have taken seriously as a waste of time. But of course, I'm not insinuating that's all that blatantly silly. Of course, some of you might not have thought that was silly. I do not want to think about that. But the other things of believing, all right, Jesus is still alive, you know, and he's in business in partnership with a laundromat with Elvis in Montreal. I did it again. Throughout history, the idea of some ancient secret knowledge is always the basis that the knowledge is astounding and brand new within itself. That's what I was getting at. And that kind of information, if it does seem to be astounding, if you pick up a newspaper, or if you picked up a book, and the gist of the book was that on the dark side of the moon is actually a colony of supernatural people. All right, that would seem to be absolutely new knowledge to you, if you're interested in that. But please note that that kind of knowledge has this kind of effect that is like dropping an anvil. You might read and go, wow, oh, I just knew that life was not as dull as I thought, and I knew there's some kind of supernatural shit going on somewhere. And God, oh, I'd love to find that out, but it's as though you just dropped it and you're just going about your business. You might remember to the next cocktail party, you might tell somebody, do you know what I read? And I believe it. It was in a book. What many people's nervous system is wired up to respond to is the idea although they don't know my term, that if there is some kind of information somewhere that might have the ability to shock them into some kind of change, it would not be in some kind of overlapping of what they see now. Now, I'm not going to stop here. Some of you might be clever enough by now to see that the information itself, that God is a Martian, is not entirely new, because they have got to know the terms God, Martian, is. So the people would have to know that. So the information was not brand new. It can never be too drastic. Or else it would say, all right, the secret of life is gefunts. It seriously is gefunts, and the guy said it. And you leave and you say, could you spell that? Maybe he does. And they leave and say, well, thank you. And you can't, what's gefunts? So it can't be too drastic. But it's got to be to where, apparently, although they're not thinking in my terms, that there's actually no overlap. What they're looking at, they're worried about the nature of God, or, as being synonymous with the purpose of life, maybe. And then, what might be God? Is it actually in my subconscious? Is he all just little pieces of us? Is it a spirit? Is it really an old man living out on a throne somewhere? And so to them, they would have never come up with the idea that God's a Martian. So to them, that would be new information that was not actually in the overlapping of things they'd already thought about. In other words, they did not just one day, suddenly, as it were, sort of put things together and went, aha, I'll bet you, now that I think about it, I'll bet you that the old son of a gun's from Mars. It just would not have happened. But notice that kind of information. It keeps popping up in history. It doesn't seem that silly to many people. With these so-called occult books, the history of mystical ideas, that's the history of it that's been remembered. All you got to do is look them up in books, and I'm sure plenty of you have read plenty of that stuff. But you read something that seemed to be astounding at the time, or it may be astounding to you for the first time you read it. It may grab your attention, even though someone may have claimed to said it in 1490. And you go, wow, that is weird, that is heavy, that's weird. And you almost feel like, hey, that could be true, or I hope that's true, or that's neat. But it's just like dropping the thing, and it has no real effect. The closer it gets to being the extreme of crunch, it's just so extreme it makes no sense. The further it gets out there to that extreme, the less impact it has. But on the person, it may seem to have a great impact right then of, God, a Martian, holy Jesus, damn, boy, oh, it's time for the news. And that's about it. The secret, one way to properly describe the secret that I am to you for the first time on this planet in our history, is at the 3D level, where everyone is presently now, what to you would be the secret, lies in one place, and that's where everything overlaps. Not weird stuff. When I say overlaps, I'll include everything that you now know overlaps. Not something you don't know. Not some piece of information I'm holding out that I know that God is a Venusian. The secret lies where everything you know presently overlaps. Another aspect that people like to ask about once they begin to have little bursts of actual experience involved with this in their own nervous system was about how to keep up the energy level, or how can you get the kind of energy that you have sometimes when you seem to have these thunder and lightning storms in your own nervous system. And you just have no doubt as to the validity of what you're doing, the course you're on, and then it just seems like it disappears for weeks and months. As far as there being a secret source of energy, that secret source of energy at this level is at the place where everything overlaps. That's where it is. Your energy is used up at a predictable level for you. It is operating at the Fred or the Mary rate as long as you're dealing with this kind of separate two-dimensional consciousness of looking at something such as, it's not just beliefs and desires, etc. It is like the problematic questions of what will I do in a situation. There you lay, should I get up and cut the grass? And you raise up just enough on the couch that you can look out the window and you see how tall it is. And then you lay back down and you watch TV a little more, you read a little more, and then you think, all right, the grass. How long has it been since I cut it? Has it been 2 weeks? 2 weeks is about, my father used to, at home, he only cut the grass twice a week. So, did I cut it 2 weeks ago? If I did, even though it may look a little high, it would seem to be some justification for waiting again. Because the average person, didn't I read somewhere? Then you raise and look up again, and you look out, and a car goes by and reminds you of something. Oh, on that other channel they're having the Le Mans replay, so you turn it on. It goes on that you can't seem to decide.